welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave contact information there. Thank you. So today's video is going to be in continuation with the Arudha Lagna through signs series that I started. And today is going to be about Scorpio Arudha Lagna. Now, first of all, again, as an introduction before I get into the subject matter, if you don't know what Arudha Lagna is, how to calculate it, whether, which sign your Arudha Lagna is placed in, check out the video description. I will leave a link there to a video that I made a while ago that is really short, concise, to the point, with examples. Will show you exactly how to calculate your Arudha Lagna. And so please go ahead and watch that video first to see if this video applies to you. Thank you. And okay, so Scorpio Arudha Lagna. This was like one that I kind of had been waiting for because it's one of the more complex Arudha Lagnas and kind of tricky in a sense, because it's really one of those signs that I've noticed connected to controversial people. Like, my impression is, so I'm gonna say this right off the bat, okay, I started on a negative note, but please don't let that deter you from listening to the rest of the video. I'm not like overly negative, but I'm just, well, telling it like it is from my observations, that people with Scorpio Arudha Lagna tend to become controversial figures once they become public. And you're actually going to see that yourselves when I mention the examples. And you're going to see some examples on the screen, actually, of famous people who have this Arudha Lagna. And just briefly, I remind you that Arudha Lagna, unlike the actual Lagna, is the illusion that a person casts in the Maya, or the world of the material illusionary world, like ancient Hindu philosophers used to think. And the reason why they are perceived as negatively is because, well, it's quite easy to see, because the rulers of Scorpio, Mars and Ketu, are both natural malefic planets, and also the ruler of the third house from the Arudha Lagna in this case is ruled by Saturn. The ruler is Saturn, which is also another naturally malefic planet. And if you remember in the video that I made, actually, well, I'm going to link those in the description. There are two videos that I made about Arudha Lagna in general. One of them is really concise and kind of shows you how to calculate it, and the other one is more in-depth, and I show examples and I get more philosophical about it, and it's about 1 hour long. And in that video, I think I said, the houses that are most important in determining how people will perceive you, how they will perceive your energy, are the first, the third, the seventh, and to a lesser extent the 10th house from the Arudha Lagna. And but especially the first and the third house from the Arudha Lagna shows your basic personality, your intents, or like the way that people perceive the way you go about doing things. So if all of these houses are predominantly malefic, people will tend to mistrust you. People will tend to think that you are not a pure-hearted person, because you're being ruled by natural malefics again. Unless you have benefics in the first, the third, or the seventh from the Arudha Lagna, and again, to a lesser extent, the 10th from the Arudha Lagna, most likely people will tend to mistrust you, and you're going to come across at least a few misunderstandings in your life where people just demonize you, or you get blamed for things that you didn't do, or you get, basically scapegoated. Or people just, mistrust your intentions, but I'm gonna get more in depth as I go along. So, in general, if you are a Scorpio Arudha Lagna, people will see you as a generally dark, brooding, intense, secretive kind of person, also a little bit sexy or sensuous, possessing a kind of quiet power. You're kind of seen as that power behind the throne sort of thing. A sort of person. You might be seen as an occultist, someone who could easily be involved with things like, obviously, tarot, astrology, and even witchcraft or Wicca, and all things taboo in general. And maybe even like things like voodoo or Kabbalah or anything that has to do with like demons and spirits and death and all this stuff. This is stuff that people will tend to see you as. They can see you as someone who's really almost gothic in some way. And especially if you also have like natural interests in these subjects, then it will come across even more strongly. But otherwise, like, even if you're all sugar spice and everything nice, people will still see you as someone who has like a hidden dark streak, or like, you know, someone who could potentially have bodies in the basement, you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of a thing. Because again, the rulers of Scorpio are Mars and Ketu, which are naturally malefic, and Ketu is the planet that rules the spirit world and faith, religion, and all this stuff. But being connected to Mars and in Scorpio, it's more of a dark side of the spiritual world, if you will. Yeah. So people can also think of you as kind of an energy vampire sometimes. Like maybe they react strongly to your energy, like they feel you just suck out the air out of a room, depending on what other planets are aspecting the ascendant, the Arudha Lagna, I mean. And like I said, okay, because malefics rule the first and the third, people will tend to perceive you negatively. So can easily become controversial if you become a public figure. The second house from the Arudha Lagna and falls in Sagittarius. Your speech gives the impression of someone who has high levels of wisdom, knowledge, truthfulness. So when you do speak, people actually tend to have a good impression of you, because you come across from the second house from the Arudha Lagna, which is Sagittarius. So people will perceive you as knowledgeable, truthful. They will tend to listen to you as someone who is a figure of wisdom, like a philosopher, and heed your advice generally, again, unless there are a lot of malefic influences on the second from the Arudha, which case, again, you could be really demonized for no reason, depending. But already, you know, with the second house being in Sagittarius, being ruled by Jupiter, which is the great benefic, even if you have malefics in the second house, chances are that people will still tend to react positively to you when you speak. Right. Yeah, and you also come across, like I said, philosophical, optimistic, broad-minded, broad-minded and tolerant. And like I said, third house from the Arudha Lagna falls in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. So people will see you as this perpetual chess player that is going through life, you know, like constantly calculating movements and how to outsmart opposition. And like you're seen as someone who like is always one step ahead of the game, or like one step ahead of everybody else. You are seen as someone who calculates their every move, like I said, so a strategist, that kind of thing. So because of this, and coupled with Mars Ketu ruling Scorpio, Arudha Lagna, and Saturn ruling the third from Arudha Lagna, people will see you as, well, on the one hand, a powerful person, but on the other hand can also be seen as mistrustful. And this is something that, as a parenthesis, I should have said from the beginning. What I have noticed is with women, and you can again see this with examples, and I'm going to talk about it more at the end. Women who have this Arudha Lagna, from what I've noticed, they tend to be really perceived as the dark side of feminine. You know, like those kinds of women who use their powers of seduction to achieve power or to manipulate men, and they're often kind of mistrusted and seen as like witches almost, like the kind of women that really bring out men's worst fears, but at the same time kind of are intriguing, kind of like a little bit of danger around them. But they're also seen as like powerful, and especially women with Arudha Lagna tend to be not very popular because I think, this is a debate in itself, but people in general don't, especially men, don't particularly like women who are powerful. And because you come across as powerful, people will tend to mistrust you even more, I think, if you're a woman with this placement, than if you are a man. If you are a man with this placement, people will still tend to mistrust your intentions and think that you're, kind of a schemer. But you are going to be seen more like powerful, and there's definitely, from what I've noticed, less of a sexualization of men who have this position. So it's really interesting to see that, because I think, again, this is kind of a philosophical debate in itself, but I do think it's because when people, particularly when men see women who are powerful, they feel the need to bring that down by objectifying them, or by saying that, this woman has achieved things only because she used her looks or her sexuality or whatever, and women who have this Arudha Lagna tend to be objectified because it's a way to basically kind of tone down their achievements. And for men, it's just, they're just seen as kind of quiet powers behind the throne, behind the scene, but they are not really attacked for this as much. I don't think so. Well, at least this was my observation, so I'm really curious as to what you might think about this. Please comment. Right, so continuing with the house placements, I was at the 3rd house, so moving to the 4th house. The 4th house from the Arudha Lagna is in Aquarius, which shows that people will see your family of origin as unusual, unorthodox, maybe having some foreign elements, also connected to science, technology, maybe New Age philosophies, but generally you could also be seen as coming from a family that is really individualistic, brilliant, and strange somehow. Definitely not your average status quo family, I guess, depending on which society you live in. But basically, regardless of the kind of society that you live in, your family of origin will be seen as a little bit unusual than the average. So 5th house from the Arudha Lagna will fall in Pisces, which shows that when it comes to the way that you enjoy yourself, your leisure time, your hobbies, your passions, you are seen as someone who is quite pure. So, and interestingly enough, so like when you go for things that you really love and really care about, you're seen as someone who is really honest and pure and even vulnerable, because it's ruled by Pisces. And also it is seen that you can be a lover of the sea and a lover of travels in general. And your children will also be perceived, again, lovers of sea and traveling, and also in general will be seen as people who are broad-minded, philosophical, wise, good-natured, altruistic, kind, and very faith and imagination based. 6th house from the Arudha Lagna will fall in Aries. This shows that you are going to be perceived to be a really fierce competitor. Someone who is going to hit hard in their enemies and competition, and also subordinates if you have any. So people will generally not want to mess with you very much. And this also, by the way, 6th from the Arudha Lagna together with the 3rd from the Arudha Lagna and the 1st kind of paints the overall picture of you're a pretty tough person, or at least that's part of the first impression that people have about you. 7th house from the Arudha Lagna in Taurus will show that your partner or your spouse will be seen as someone who is balanced, patient, good-natured, sweet, loving, easygoing, beautiful, artistic, having a nice speaking voice or maybe a singing voice. They could be known as someone who maybe is a singer, or they're just going to be known as having a really pleasant voice. They're going to be perceived as patient and generally uncomplicated, especially when compared to you. And they're also going to be seen as kind of a salt of the earth kind of person. So really just simple, down to earth, meat and potatoes kind of person who doesn't really, doesn't think too much about the higher meanings of life or stuff like that. And it also shows that the class of people who will oppose you openly is shown by Venus, which rules young women. So women who have not been mothers yet. These can be people who oppose you directly, meaning openly they're going to tell you to your face that they have a problem with you or something. And this is another thing, by the way. You should notice the female examples in this video, which you see on the screen. Most of them are women that have gotten a lot of hate from other women. But it goes hand in hand with the other thing that I said about the first and the third house as well. And the parentheses about women in power and all that stuff. And, okay, 8th house from the Arudha Lagna will fall in Gemini, which shows that your health is generally going to be seen as good. With your nervous system and digestive system especially being perceived as possibly your weakest point. Another parenthesis here, it's really funny to me because I did some research, of course, when I was preparing the video and even before, throughout my experience and all this stuff. And Angelina Jolie has this placement, and if you think about everything that I said about Arudha Lagna, like, she is the prototype of someone who has Scorpio Arudha Lagna. I am going to talk more in detail about her at the end when I talk about examples, but just with regards to the 6th house and about mental health, nervous system, she portrayed, I think the character was called Lisa Rowe in Girl Interrupted, which was the part that got her an Oscar, and who was basically, I think she was a sociopath or something, so mental illness thing. So, and it's really interesting, actually. I haven't looked at her chart, but I wonder if there are any other malefics going into the 8th house from the Arudha Lagna, because this could explain why people always kind of perceived her as someone who's mentally unbalanced, despite all the, of course, aside from all the fact, the weird stuff that she did, which probably made people think that she's unstable, but whatever. It was just interesting to me because she was known for playing these characters, and also I think in Gia she played characters that, they were kind of like mentally all over the place and unhinged and all this stuff. Anyway, just a parenthesis. So, okay, 8th house in Gemini. Aside from the fact that people will see your weakest points as being your nervous system and digestive system, you can also easily get bank loans because you are seen as someone who is quite financially savvy and able to pay back your debts. 9th house from the Arudha Lagna will fall in Cancer, which shows that people will think of you, your belief system in general, as being very female-oriented. And I also kind of noted here, I wrote down, because in my impression, at least, based on the examples that I've seen also in real life of people who have this, you're kind of perceived, especially if you're a woman, you're going to be seen as a witch. Like, you're going to be seen as someone who, is all hoodoo or voodoo or, into Wicca, very anti-patriarchy, that kind of thing. You're going to be perceived like that, even if you are not like that at all. So people are, especially men, are going to tend to mistrust you because you seem to have a reverence for feminine energy, so for motherly energy especially. And because the 9th house also shows the class of people that are going to support you in this life, so you're definitely going to be supported by your mother, your own mother. Again, this really matches in Angelina Jolie's case and all the other examples as well, I think. And it also shows that mothers in general are going to be supporting you. So yeah, these are the class of people that are going to be supporting you, and also you're going to be perceived as being very, okay, like I mentioned, female-centric in your belief system. So you could be worshipping, if you're Christian, maybe you're worshipping the Virgin Mary or other female saints, or, you know, you really need some kind of you're perceived to be someone who really wants to worship the divine feminine and Mother Earth and all that stuff. And the class of people that are also going to support you, aside from mothers, is also going to be anybody involved in Cancer-ruled professions. So this could be professions connected to the home. Anything connected to the home could be home decorators, people involved in restoration, real estate, the restaurant and hotel business, and also anything to do with fluids. So it could even be alcohol business, but to a lesser extent, or anything connected to the ocean, like, I don't know, marine biologist or something. And yeah, pretty much that's what and again, I stress this, the 9th house from the Arudha Lagna shows the class of people that you want to target. For instance, if you're opening a business or you're looking for help, you should know that these are the class of people that are going to be most likely on your side. So if you're opening a business, don't open a business directed at young women, because young women are hating your guts. I mean, I'm talking about you, Scorpio Arudha Lagna, because as you're going to see to the end, the hidden enemies are also shown by young women. So both direct enemies and indirect enemies are also young women. So yeah, you don't want to be opening something like a nail parlor, because it's probably not going to go well, or you might end up being ruined because of a scandal or something, or some rumors being spread about you. 10th house will fall in Leo, which shows that when it comes to your social status and your career, people will tend to perceive you as someone who has the ability to be a leader. They will tend to see you as a leader, actually, even if you're not. And also can see you as someone who is really artistic and creative and can easily succeed in anything that implies, you know, being center stage. Could even be something like, obviously, dramatic art, so being an actor, or being a public speaker of some sort, or someone who's like a spokesperson for something, and also can be seen as someone who would easily succeed in any professions connected to children, connected to teaching, connected to government, politics, and yeah, somehow your oratory abilities will be seen as being connected to your status and your career. And the 11th house in Virgo will fall in Virgo. So the 11th house from the Arudha Lagna will fall in Virgo, which shows that people will perceive your friend circles, your acquaintances, basically your entourage, and your older siblings to be introspective, serious, conscientious, intelligent, educated, analytical, perhaps connected to medical professions or some other exact sciences. You can easily make money from inconstant sources of income. That's another thing, because Mercury rules the 11th house, which shows that you could make money out of things like sales or project-based work. So basically any kind of job that doesn't imply getting a fixed paycheck every month. The 12th house from the Arudha Lagna, like I also mentioned, falls in Libra, which shows that, number one, your hidden enemies, like I said, are young women. And so women who are not young women, quote unquote, means women who have not been mothers, actually. So even if these young women, quote unquote, are past the age of 50, if they don't have children, they're basically considered to be signified by Venus as well. So they're also going to fall into the category of your hidden enemies. And you're also going to be seen as easily acquiring debt on account of your hedonism, your love of pleasure and beauty. Now, this is really funny because John F. Kennedy also has this, and John F. Kennedy was really known to be a philanderer. So that could be if you're, well, actually, even if you're a woman, not necessarily just if you're a man, but, yeah, you could be perceived as someone who, you know, you end up wasting money, or you end up getting in debt because of the fact that you are too hedonistic or too pleasure-oriented. Could also have to do with drugs and alcohol and anything that has to do with basically getting drunk, quote-unquote, and abandoning yourself to pleasure and all that stuff. And you can also easily get compensation monetarily if you get fired, or if a contract ends, or if you go through a dispute or anything, you can get compensations through that. Because Libra rules the 12th house. And okay, what else did I want to say? Right, hidden enemies, quote unquote, can also just be anybody in Venus related professions, and open enemies as well in your case. So Venus dominated professions could be anybody involved in the beauty industry, like I mentioned, nail salons or parlors, but it can also be like hairdressers, tailors, fashion designers, finance people, anybody in any kind of beautifying industry, like makeup artists, whatever. A sweets business as well, anybody involved with the sweets business, with sugars, and just any kind of artist, basically. And finally, famous people who have a Scorpio Arudha Lagna, like you've probably seen on the screen, are Angelina Jolie. Now, I have to say a few words about this because, like I did mention, I mean, I was psyched when I found out that she has a Scorpio Arudha Lagna, because she is really the perfect embodiment of someone who really, really embodied the Scorpio energy, especially early on in her career. And in my opinion, she was probably, so I don't know whether it was genuine, because based on her chart, actually, she doesn't have that much of a dark energy. So I really think that maybe she intuitively knew that this is what people wanted to see, and she just put on a show for the sake of the audience. So I don't know, maybe that was the case, or it was just that some other things in her chart show that she truly is a very dark person. But especially if you remember, if you're an older millennial like me, you remember when she started out, she was known for showing a lot of skin. So she was, first of all, she was known as a sex symbol, and, you know, she was really known for her beauty and her seductiveness, and she played a lot of these characters that were kind of, kind of raunchy, like showing a lot of skin, like I said, and, also played a lot of women who were, like, also beautiful but dangerous, and really kind of lured innocent little unsuspecting male victims, like kind of like a Black Widow sort of character. And aside from that, she also played a lot of detectives, which is very Scorpio. She played a lot of spies, which is very Scorpio. It's all about hidden, behind the scenes stuff. And like I also mentioned, the character that she played in Girl Interrupted was a very damaged, character, because, and very kind of dark and depressed and all this stuff and all over the place. And almost downright sadistic, which you would definitely associate with the energy of Scorpio. And also, of course, she was branded as, thank you, motorbike driver. Anyway, she was also branded as, a homewrecker, famously, and even before the famous Brad Pitt relationship, she was branded as a homewrecker, I think, when she went through. Oh, and by the way, aside from the fact that she was branded a homewrecker, and I remember back in the day, I used to be kind of a fan of hers, especially early on, and early on in her career, I mean, when she was more fun. And early on in her career, I do remember reading incidents about her where she was attacked by women in the streets, especially after the Billy Bob Thornton, and especially after the Brad Pitt relationship, because there were a lot of women who apparently saw her as a homewrecker and were trying to protect Jennifer Aniston and all this stuff. So it's really interesting how all of this really is shown by her Arudha Lagna. And just the fact that, and also right when she got married, I think, to her first husband, and then later with her other boyfriends and whatever, she was known for being eccentric and dark and cutting herself, and, you know, she wore vials of blood. She wore a vial of blood of her husband's, I think, when they got married, and he wore a vial of her blood. So there was all this, like, weird stuff with weapons and all this stuff, very Scorpio, gothic, and also her look in the early days was also very gothic. So I really think, like, she just happened to really fit into the image that people wanted to see of her, because she really played that Scorpio Arudha Lagna to the max. Another example, Sharon Stone, who, again, it's funny with Sharon Stone because if I remember right, I didn't write this down, but I think she has Moon in either the 1st or the 7th from the Arudha Lagna, so that softens her image a little bit. But she still became famous for Basic Instinct, which was all about, you know, the sex scenes, and of course she became, like, notorious around that time because she had bared a lot of skin in the film, more than supposedly other actresses at that time. And she also played a woman who was suspected of murder and played this kind of like a dark seductress, you know, whatever she was. I think she was a writer or something, who was, you know, trying to work her charms on the innocent detective. And she played a bunch of these, like, kind of typecast, probably. She played a bunch of these kind of roles where she was, again, the dangerous seductress or whatever the hell it was. So again, this falls into the image that people saw of her with Scorpio Arudha Lagna. Pamela Anderson, again, clearly was known as a sex symbol in her heyday. And now it's really funny because all of these women actually became pretty powerful as they aged. Like, I think Pamela Anderson, I haven't actually studied her much, but she was involved in charities or whatever at some point when I read. So, like, they all kind of started out showing a lot of skin and being known for their sexiness and whatever, but eventually reached a position of relative power, actually, and social influence. Another example, John F. Kennedy, obviously, was a very powerful person, the president of the U.S., sadly died tragically. He was also a pretty controversial from a number of points of view. He was rumored to be connected to the mafia and all that stuff. Winston Churchill, another powerful man of state who was, again, kind of a power behind the throne, even though everybody knew him. He was obviously very respected and definitely known for his... He was also, funny enough, known for his vices. And, yeah. So he was also not... He didn't have a perfectly pristine image either, even though he became a very revered, a very respected individual towards the end of his life. Jim Morrison, lead singer of The Doors, who sadly died young. Of course, he was pretty much the king of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. His entire image was all about, you know, being wild and dark and all this stuff, and the band was, you know, rumored to be really dark. I haven't actually researched him either that much, although I am a fan of their music, actually. I haven't researched him that much, but I do know that his life was, although short, very troubled, and, you know, he was known for having a very strong and kind of, like, I would say, sexualized, or, like, he would definitely play the wild card on stage, kind of image, you know, really unhinged, and would show up basically on drugs on stage and all that stuff. And yeah, Bill Gates, obviously another famously and very recently mistrusted public figure because he was connected with he was rumored to, whatever, I'm not going to say the word because I don't want this video to be banned, but you know what it is. you know what he was accused of anyway. And Bill Gates, I think, has always been seen as someone who's kind of like, people don't really know, because he's not a transparent person. He's not the most transparent person. But the man is clearly, you know, I mean, the man, he does charities with his wife. He has done for a long time. People are still, you know, there's all these rumors about him. People linking him to the, what's his name, the whole child prostitution ring thing. What was his name? Epstein, right. Linked him to Epstein. So, I don't know. There's all this stuff. Whether it's true or not, who knows? There's no real solid proof. But there's all this rumor being thrown around about against him, even though the man looks like, you know, Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. So, it's kind of funny to me. Meghan Markle, according to her date of birth, is her date of birth as it is given by astrothame.com is a Scorpio Arudha Lagna. So the reason I stress this is because supposedly there are rumors that she lied about her age. So I'm not sure if the date of birth is accurate, but this is the date of birth given on astrotheme.com, and based on that, she has Scorpio Arudha Lagna. And based on the fact that in a relatively short period of time she became one of the most controversial people on the planet, I would say that, well, it kind of fits the bill. And she also, you know, is pretty, I mean, she is pretty powerful because, you know, she managed to marry someone who is connected to one of the oldest royalty families in the world, actually. So, yeah, this has been pretty much it. I hope you found it useful. I hope you have enjoyed it. And please let me know of any thoughts and ideas and feedback that you might have in the comment section. And once again, thank you. So if you've liked it, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell. And if you would like a personal consultation, please check out the video description. I will link the contact information there. Thank you.